Wait, can we get McDonald's after school?
Technically, I can't drive with other people in the car, but I think it's fine.
Wait, I want to come too.
The more the merrier.
Drop me off at my dad's house at...
Hey you, remember us?
No.
We are the Eve twins. We will hack all of Roblox.
Okay.
Starting with you.
Great.
This is what you get when buying a 2.75 million euro Mercedes-AMG 1 hypercar.
No, please, sir, I don't want to go up no chimney again. Timothy, shut up and clean the chimney. I want to get a good look at you. Sir, What's that noise? Why is that?
Odpískejte sezónní sezení doma a vyražte se svým týmem za novými zážitky.
To better understand Northwest Flight 1482's
Confirm descent from 11,500. Let me know when you are positioned over Oxable.
Oxable. We won't be over the airport. We're going to fly direct to a left base leg to runway 11.
Copy that.
Left base leg? That's not what it says in the charts.
They took a shortcut?
Pakistan International Airlines Flight 268 is en route to Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal. On the flight deck, Captain Iftikhar Janjua is in command. He's a former officer in the Pakistani Air Force who's now a senior pilot instructor with the airline. The first officer is Hassan Akhtar, a junior pilot with the airline with almost 1,500 hours flying the Airbus A300. Flight 268 leaves its cruising altitude as it begins the approach into Kathmandu. In 1992, Kathmandu Airport doesn't use radar to track its planes. Every movement, planned or otherwise, must be accurately reported by the flight crew. The mountains surrounding Kathmandu require pilots to make what's known as a stepped approach. Pilots must descend to a series of lower altitudes at certain distances from the airport.
Here it is. Watch my levels.
The details of the stepped approach are laid out on a chart for the pilots. The crew works its way through the steps towards Kathmandu, approaching from the south. They should be touching down in about 6 minutes.
Alpha Charlie Hotel, continue to taxiway number 2.
Pakistan 268 is at 10 miles.
Report your level.
We crossed out of 8,500. 200 now.
Roger. Clear for final. Report 4 miles. Runway 02.
We'll call you at 4 miles, Pakistan 268. Clear for final, runway 02.
Runway 02.
Flight 268 is now less than 10 miles from the runway. Air traffic control waits for the flight crew's next position report. 3 minutes go by. Flight 268 should have reported that they've reached the next step by now.
Pakistan 268 Tower. Pakistan 268, this is Tower.
As the minutes tick by, air traffic controllers come to a horrifying realization. Flight 268 is missing somewhere in the Himalayas. It doesn't take much time for Kathmandu air traffic controllers to get word that PIA Flight 268 has crashed somewhere in the Himalayas. Within hours, the plane's wreckage is found on the side of a mountain. The flight was carrying more than 20 tons of fuel, and the plane is completely consumed by fire. All 167 people on board have died. Nepalese soldiers have retrieved the aircraft's black boxes from the wreckage of PIA Flight 268. Investigators look at the plane's flight path as the crew prepares for landing.
They started their descent. At 16 miles out, they're at 10,500 feet. Then down to 9,500 at 13 miles. 8,200 at 10 miles. Then quickly down to 7,500 until impact at 7,280.
The data reveals an astonishing fact.
So, 1,000 feet too low, right from the get-go. Wait a minute. There you go. Perfect match. They were flying the approach, but one step ahead.
What if the problem is the actual approach chart itself?
To avoid the mountains surrounding Kathmandu, pilots follow an approach chart about the size of a large postcard. It provides the specific altitudes pilots must take at set distances from the airport. They study the same chart used by the flight crew.
So is, let's say, 8,200 feet the right altitude for 10 miles or 8 miles? It's hard to say.
Even harder when it's actual size.
Investigators need to know how the crew would have prepared themselves for the complicated approach. They examine the cockpit layout of an identical Pakistan International Airlines Airbus A300.
There's no place to clip an approach chart here. There is just here. Now only the captain can see it, and he'd have to keep turning his head. Unlikely they use that. More likely he put it here.
The other clip is a full 3 feet away from either pilot.
That's not much better. It's almost impossible to read, and that handle is blocking the descent profile.
They learn that Pakistan International Airlines has only 2 places for pilots to clip their charts. Both positions make it very difficult to read a 4-inch wide piece of paper.
Could it be?
Then, quite by accident, the investigators discover a key clue regarding the pilot's misreading of the approach chart.
This definitely makes it look like 10,500 is the correct altitude at 16 miles.
Robinson finally has a theory he can put to the test.
Kathmandu Tower, good afternoon. Pakistan 268, 25 miles at 11,500.
Just a few minutes before impact, the first officer reports being 25 miles from the airport at the correct altitude of 11,500 feet.
Pakistan 268, report 16 miles, wind 180, expect Sierra approach.
Roger, call you at 16 miles, expecting Sierra approach. Sierra approach, Commander.
But when the captain looks at the approach chart, his thumb may have obscured the correct next altitude.
Here it is. Watch my levels.
Now, instead of maintaining 11,500 feet, Captain Janjua dials in the next altitude on the chart.
Descending to 10,500.
Oblivious that his plane's approach is now 1 step ahead. The crew has now made a fatal mistake. Unaware, the airliner is now descending towards a violent collision with the side of a mountain. 33,000 feet above the border between Norway and Sweden, a CRJ-200 jet cruises on autopilot during a late-night mail run for one of Sweden's largest cargo companies.
ILS approach to runway 01, inbound heading 009. Minimum
It's been a routine flight, and the plane is expected to land in about 30 minutes.
we need to climb and turn right.
Acknowledged.
And according to last ATIS, we can expect light wind and 0. What the hell?
Suddenly, the captain sees his plane is in a steep climb. He pushes the nose down.
What?
What?
The pilots can no longer make sense of what the plane is doing.
Mayday! 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 F3 to the 294! Mayday! 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 294, understood, Mayday.
What is the nature of your emergency, please?
The plane loses almost 10,000 feet of altitude and speeds towards the ground at more than 450 miles an hour.
Bank angle. Bank angle. Bank angle. Bank angle.
West Air Sweden Flight 294 hits the ground at almost 600 miles an hour. The plane is obliterated. It takes 3 hours before rescue helicopters arrive. Even from the air, it's obvious the pilots could not have survived. The next day, a team of investigators from the Swedish Accident Investigation Authority, known as the SHK, arrives at the crash site. Investigators waste no time analyzing the wreckage to pinpoint the northbound plane's orientation as it crashed.
That's the front of the plane. So, they were traveling east. This is the left wing, all right.
But it's in the wrong place for a plane flying east. This is Arvidsson's first clue about the accident. The left wing is found in the south end of the crater, and the right wing is in the north end. For a plane traveling east, it should be the other way around.
If they were coming in this way, and the left wing is over there, and they must have been upside down.
The position of the wreckage and the size of the crater paint a picture of a plane hitting the ground off course upside down and at a blazingly high speed. Incredibly, both of the plane's black boxes survived the crash. They're sent to France, where the data can be downloaded. Investigators hope the data will shed light on why the plane was so badly out of control. Investigators in Stockholm try to understand discrepancies in Flight 294's flight data.
Right here, the data shows a steep pitch up, but the plane flies level and then pitches down, not up.
Investigators soon discover that it
Už jste slyšeli tu novinku? U Keto Diet si teď můžete koupit kompletní dietní řešení ve
Investigators soon discover that it's not just the pitch data that's off.
Right here, heading and roll are wonky too.
All 4 parameters come from what's called an inertial reference unit, or IRU. It's made up of gyroscopes that provide information to the cockpit displays and to the flight data recorder. There are 2 IRUs, one for each pilot's display.
The FDR gets its data from the captain's side, IRU.
The captain's display and the flight data recorder both get their pitch data from the same source.
Now this is what the captain was seeing.
How far can you launch an enemy in fan?
Всем привет! В этом видео я разобью Nissan GTR 34, который сам сделал из пластилина. Да, эту машину я сделал из пластилина. Полный обзор на нее уже...
Whoa, up. Whoa, up. Whoa, up. Altitude. 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 Whoa, up. Whoa, up. Whoa, up. Whoa, up. Pull 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 up, pull up. Terrain, terrain. Pull up, pull up. 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 Pull up.
Na vyrážky jedině alkohol.
Ne, to se musí vymáčknout.
Hlavně nemačkat.
Tak
Aknózní pleť? Spirida AC Color Neo. Funguje, nesklame.
My name's Anthony Padilla, and today I'm going to be sitting down with plane crash survivors to learn what it's really like to live through such a harrowing and torturous experience. Were these plane crash survivors able to emerge from this horrifying experience completely unscathed with a newfound drive and appreciation for life? Or do they live every day deeply scarred by the memories ingrained within them after surviving such a traumatic and unthinkable nightmare? Hello, Wendy.
Hi, Anthony.
Annette.
Hello, how are you?
Can you give us some backstory leading up to the plane ride itself?
In 1992, with my fiance in Vietnam, he had planned this very romantic vacation on the South China Sea. We left at 7 a.m. I see that plane and I say, no, there's no way I go in there.
Is it like a tiny plane?
So small, and I am a claustrophobic. So he said, yeah, I know, but please do it for us. And it's only 20 minutes, you can do it. We're going to this most romantic place. I've booked everything, please try. Okay. I sat next to him, the third row, 31 people on board. I could almost hit the ceiling with my head. So I did not put on my seatbelt. Plane took off. I looked at his watch. I was counting the minutes. This was the only thing I was doing. And then 20 minutes, I said, all right, okay, what's happening? And then we just kept on flying. He said, well, I knew I had to tell you, I had to get you into the plane, but it was actually 50 or 60 minutes. 50th minute, you make a rather large drop. People were screaming already. And I said, well, a shitty little plane like that will fill if you have an air pocket, of course. So don't worry, don't worry. So then I softened up and said, don't be afraid.
Really? You were comforting him at that point?
Of course, because the end was near at that point. So I was already getting relieved that we were almost there. Then another drop. People really screaming loud. Accelerating engines again. Another drop. He looks at me really scared. I look at him. He reached for my hand. I reach for his. Everything goes black.
August 2nd, 1985, I had been flying for 6 months for Delta Airlines, left Fort Lauderdale, and we were headed to Dallas. We took off, no problem. We had a little turbulence going into Dallas. We were preparing for landing, and it was starting to get rough. It was a bad thunderstorm.
Did you start to get nervous at all about the turbulence?
We were going side to side, and then there were drops. Right? You know that drop.
Yeah.
Our perception because of TV movies is, oh, people are going to be like, ah! It wasn't like that at all. People were very quiet.
It's almost like people are holding their breath rather than letting it out.
Now we're on airport property and we hit a big water tower, and that caused the plane to explode.
Oh, man.
So the part of the plane that I was on, where the survivors were, basically sheared off from the rest of the plane, but that's because the rest of the plane exploded.
Were the pilots saying anything? Was there any kind of indication before it just kind of went black? Was there any indication that something was very wrong?
No, not at all. It came out of nowhere. And I didn't see storms of rain and there was, of course, all this. The plane was completely off track. And then what happened is we bumped into a mountain. The plane lost one wing, accelerated into the next mountain, where it went upside down and the cockpit broke off. And then next, I wake up in the midst of chaos, pieces of plane, and I saw the vegetation of the jungle. So of course you think, where the f am I? Of course, that's how you feel. And
when we hit that water tower and the plane exploded, I saw a fireball coming down the aisle at me. So that's when I closed my eyes, because I thought, if I'm gonna burn to death, I didn't want to know.
So you see just a wall of fire inching up toward you.
Not even inching, it just felt like it was coming at warp speed. And then stopped. Felt like being in Space Mountain in Disney World, because you could hear the metal, you could feel things kind of twisting, you could feel the heat coming at you, and then it stopped.
there was something heavy on top of me, and I pushed it away. It was a chair with a dead man in it, as it turned out. And then I looked at my left, and then I saw my fiance still strapped in his chair, and he was dead.
Oh my God. So did you get to mourn in that moment, or were you just in survival mode?
No, I must have gone into shock, because the next memory is outside on the jungle floor. I'm sitting on 1,000 twigs and with all this vegetation. There was a wing of a plane and chairs. I had 12 fractures in my hips, 2 in my knee, and a collapsed lung. But I was sitting there, and I looked down, and I see this giant gaping wound on my shin, and I saw the bone, the blue bone sticking out, and
Vždycky jsem věřila, že jste silnější, než si myslíte.
saw the bone, the blue bone sticking out, and a big gaping hole in my knee. Of course, what happened is that I was not wearing my seatbelt. I was going like a lonely piece in a dryer.
Yeah.
And then I landed underneath this chair of this other person. You have enough adrenaline, of course, going through your body, and the pain is somewhat muted. But what I was more focusing on, because there was a gentleman sitting next to me, a Vietnamese, who spoke English even.
He's strapped in his seat. He's alive.
He's alive, but at one point I saw him getting weaker, and I asked him, please don't die, don't leave me alone. Let's go and get some water.
Herobrine.
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 Herobrine. Minecraft's biggest mystery for the past 14 years. From becoming the figure that haunted every kid's Minecraft world, everyone on the internet knows that there is only one Herobrine. But what if there was a second Herobrine? About a month ago, I came across this Reddit post. A user by the name of ProudJaguar696 made a channel to upload videos they recorded back in 2017. They wanted to showcase their journey on figuring out how to beat the game. But when looking into the channel, I found something much different. The video starts off with our protagonist in the mines. We can see the date of the recording, which possibly means they're playing on 1.12. As the player starts heading down the mines, we already notice they keep looking back, as if they think something is following them. Then they start typing.
Hey guys, it's Simon. Welcome back to Beating the Dragon.
We now have a name for our protagonist, Simon. We also notice Simon's background, which seems to be a screenshot of what looks to be Simon and another player called XXAngeloXX322. Remember that name. Simon begins strip mining for a few minutes, but while mining, Simon keeps coming across air pockets, something that doesn't naturally happen in world generation. But as the video continues, it cuts to a new clip where Simon wants to show us a cool mining technique he found. But while mining, Simon notices something off. Simon notices a large dugout area. Inside, we don't see anything except this weird object in the distance. And by hiring the exposure, we can make out what seems to be black pillars. For what, we don't know. But we can also see this black outline, which we can't tell nor make out what it could be. But before trying to find answers, we hear blocks breaking. Immediately, the clip cuts to Simon running back to the surface, but when Simon escapes, he's met with a strange occurrence. Simon panics, he heads to his house, and the video ends. Unfortunately, we're left with a lot of questions, like what are with the air pockets? What are these black pillars? What is this black outline? Who is mining the blocks? What happened to all the leaves? Who is messing with Simon? Wait, what happened to all the leaves? We've actually seen these tree trunks before. Herobrine is known for messing with people's worlds, and one of the many ways he does this is by removing the leaves of people's trees. Could this be Herobrine? We're not too sure, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to move on to the second video, Fishing.mp4. Our next video takes place 6 days after the last one. We start with Simon writing us an odd message.
I don't want to look under my bed anymore.
If we want to understand what this means, we'll have to revisit it later on. Simon then exits his house and goes to the mine, but doesn't go any further and instead gazes at the staircase leading into the fog, almost as if he's recalling certain memories. He then covers up the hole and heads to his pond. There, he attempts on getting enchantment books from fishing, but moments after, Simon sees a zombie pigman. He kills it confusingly, trying to figure out where it came from, and rightfully so. We can see the broken nether portal, and considering pigmans don't spawn in the overworld, it'd be impossible for them to spawn unless a player had spawned them. But Simon brushes it off and heads back to his house. And at 4 minutes and 53 seconds, we get this. The rod appears to be floating. Simon, obviously freaked out, heads to his house, but still keeping the rod attached. And then it slowly starts going down. Simon makes an iron sword and cowardly heads outside, but not before writing.
I think this might be cause of the statue.
He heads outside to see his pond turned into a giant crater. Trying to understand the scenario, Simon gets hit by a zombie, falls, and the video ends. We're left with a lot of questions, so I'll go through everything in order. Starting off with Simon's message. He states he doesn't want to look under his bed anymore. We see right before the video ends, under his bed is cobblestone blocks, but we can see the entire floor is made up of grass. Why go out of your way to place 2 cobblestone blocks under your bed? Because there was never grass blocks under his bed. I'll play a clip from my video a few minutes ago. Tell me what you see. Simon panics, he heads to his house, and the video ends. He heads to his house, he heads to his... Who is under Simon's bed? One thing's for sure, we can see white eyes. The eyes of Herobrine. But it doesn't look like Herobrine. But before I go on to that, we now know there was someone spying on Simon. And Simon probably realized this after looking back at the footage, so he covered up his bed to make sure he wouldn't be watched. Okay, but what about the zombie pigman? What happened there? Well, knowing that whoever this was under Simon's bed is probably the same person messing with him. So he also broke Simon's portal and summoned the pigman to freak Simon out, which further proves what happened with the fishing rod situation. We can also see the way the fishing rod moves is the exact same way it would move when attaching to a player. This means that this thing is invisible and the person we see taunting Simon. We also notice right before the video ends, when Simon is falling, we get a glimpse of a sign. I tried brightening the image using AI quality enhancer, asked many others to make out what the words could be, but unfortunately, we couldn't figure out what it says. But one thing's for sure, whatever is written was most likely by the person attacking Simon. Okay, but why? Why do all of this? Why would this thing go out of its way to attack a little kid just trying to play Minecraft? Is it malicious or is there a deeper meaning? If we want to find the answer, we can't just move on to the next video because this channel only has 2 videos. But if this is where the student be making this video,